Greetings everyone, my name is Shoaib Rai, and as you are already aware of by some of the videos that I have posted, that I am the current biology faculty from Newgram Coaching Institute, and with this video I am going to bring a quick recap and a very casual form of revision for your board's examination, which is to be taken on 27th for class 12. Okay, so without wasting any more time, let us begin with this. The first thing that is probably very much important for you and is very important in the sense that it carries a lot of marks, and you need to be aware of two things. That is, in the reproduction unit itself. Okay, from the reproduction unit itself, there are two questions that carry the most maximum number of marks. Although we have discussed that first part earlier, this second part is not yet discussed properly, so that is why I have brought this as a quick recap for both of those videos. The first was from human reproduction. You need to be very much aware and very much attentive on the spermatogenesis as well as the oogenesis formation or the oogenesis process. Along with that, in the floral reproduction or the plant reproduction, you need to be aware of the double fertilization phenomenon, on how this works. So as you all are very much aware of the entire structure of the gynoecium as well as the androecium which contains mostly of your stamens, okay, and the gynoecium which mostly contains of the pistil or carpels when we call it in a bunch, that is more than one of that form, more than the pistillary form is called as a proper carpel. Okay, similarly in the androecium as well, we call it stamen. From stamen we can divide it through anther and filament. Anther which contains the anther sacs, and anther sacs which harbor your pollens. Okay, those pollens are your male gametes which from pollination from various vectors and various measures are carried to your stigma. That is the receptacle part, or that is the receivery part, which holds or which accepts on the basis of pollen pistil interaction. Now what is this pollen pistil interaction? We will discuss as we go further. Pollen pistil interaction, since we have already at least once talked about it, let's discuss what is this pollen pistil interaction. A specific type of interaction which involves your complementary action from both your pollens as well as your pistil. Now what or how is this? So it is nothing but an enzyme cascade. What is this enzyme cascade? Based on your compatibility, if it is compatible, what is compatible? If the pollen is compatible with the stigma, that means the genotype or the phenotype is compatible, it will accept and allow for the pollen tube to develop. This is the pollen pistil interaction based on your enzymatic cascade. Okay. Now from this pollen pistil interaction, what is the development? The development is your pollen tube. This pollen tube has two ways that it can enter from the long axis of your style to the ovary. Now those two places that it can enter are your micropylar end and the classal end. Okay. Now this micropylar and classal end, it can also be from other sides of the integuments also, but that is very rare or not that common. Not to say as in rare, but it is very uncommon. Okay. The more common cases are from the micropylar end and the classal end. Okay. Now the direction is also based on the enzymatic cascade or the favoritism on which side to operate on or which side to move on from. Okay, that pollen tube grows inside. Okay, penetrates inside, and in this pollen tube there are two cells that you need to be aware of. That is your vegetative cell and your generative cell. Why do I say cells and not nuclei? Because if you see in that generalized form, both of these will be two different cells taken from and fusing to get your fertilization. Okay, now the generative nuclei or the generative cell fuses with the female gamete. Okay, the female gamete, don't get confused, the entire egg sac is not the female gamete. This is the female gametophyte that harbors or that possesses the female gamete. Okay, in that female gamete, okay, or in that female gametophyte, there are 8 cell structures or 8 nuclei and 7 cell structures. Okay, and in this part, when the pollen tube grows and the generative nuclei fuses, this is called as the first fertilization. Okay, the second fertilization occurs when the vegetative nuclei fuses with the 2 polar nuclei. Okay, and this is the phenomenon of your double fertilization. You can see it from this clear picture as well for your convenience. Okay, whatever I have explained, it is simply given in this. See, the stigma which receives the pollen grain with red and blue, if you can visibly see it, this simply means the generative and the vegetative parts, which moves further from the pollen pistil interaction are developing pollen tube carrying those 2 sperm cells. Okay, not the sperm nuclei just, they are cells itself. Okay, moving into the ovules, can you tell me what is this placement of your ovaries called as? You have learned it in class 11th and I would expect the answer in your comment section. Okay, these synergids, as you can see, okay, and this is the micropylar end. So the fertilization is going to occur from the micropylar end against the classal ends. Okay, against the classal ends. Remember, it can happen from classa also and from the sides also. From the side it is very uncommon, but from the micropylar and classa it is much more common. Okay, micropylar end will receive, this is your female gamete, okay, which fuses, and the polar nuclei fuses with the vegetative nuclei. Okay, and this forms your double fertilization. This forms triploids, which forms your primary endosperm nucleus, and this forms our embryo or the zygote, which later develops into the embryo. Okay, this was your major topic, okay, that you need to focus, okay, before you attempt this examination. Okay, now moving on to the next part. Okay, the next part comes from ecology. Okay, this is very commonly asked question and very much easy if you remember what these are. Okay, if I were to ask you a question, can the biomass or what is the difference between pyramid of energy and pyramid of biomass? The first and irrevocable answer that you must mention is that pyramid of energy can never be inverted. Why? Because you cannot give the energy that you have taken in more amounts that you have consumed. Okay, what I mean to say is that if you have 100 rupees and you give someone or someone takes from you 90 rupees, they cannot give you back 100 rupees if they only possess 90. Do you get the idea? Inverting simply means giving it back to the lower trophics or the higher trophics from the ones you have received. If you see it from this figure itself, it will help you to understand and make a clear distinction on pyramid of energy, pyramid of biomass and pyramid of numbers. Okay, this is the ecological pyramids. Okay, a very important chapter, a very important topic, okay, and a very scoreable part. Okay, if you see from this image itself, what it says that is the pyramid of energy. What will be at the first? Energy which is being lost. That means the lowest of trophics carry the highest of energies. Okay, moving on to the consumers, they receive 10% less of it. Why? Because of the 10% loss of energy that we have learned as a formula and as a law from the 10% law given by Justice von Liebig. Okay, from moving on to your 10% to 1%, which receives as the secondary consumers. What and how is this energy dissipated? You must have learned this in your thermodynamics also. that the entropy of the individuals, that means the state of the individuals, can never go as del G equals to positive, because that will mean that the energy is inverted, and that is a only case which happens in earthquakes. Okay. Now, available energy which decreases as we go up the pyramid. Okay, as we go up the pyramid, it decreases. The energy is lost in the form of heat. Okay, lost in the form of heat. This was pyramid of energy. Moving on to pyramid of biomass. What do you understand? Before attempting something, you need to understand what is this pyramid of biomass itself. So the biomass, when you hear the term biomass, what do you mean by that? That means the numbers of individual contributing to the mass of a individual species. Okay? Mass of a individual species. If I say that this somehow represents what? This represents the aquatic ecosystem. So if I say the pyramid of biomass for aquatic ecosystem, what do you understand by that? It simply means that pyramid of biomass would include at the lowest level or at the lowest trophic level. Remember, they will be always producers. Why they are always producers? Because they are of the largest amount. Based on them, we have consumers, right? Based on those primary consumers, we have secondary consumers, then tertiary consumers, quaternary consumers, so many chains of consumers based on that one lowest trophic level and the producer range. Okay, so the production of, or the pyramid of biomass is that these are our producers, okay, which then move on to our primary consumers. Although this decreases as we move up, it decreases in what? It decreases in the pyramid of biomass. That means the contributors, the primary consumers, secondary consumers, this goes on decreasing. Why? Because they are dependent. Because they are dependent on this. But that can also be inverted. This simply can be inverted. Only happens in the pyramid of biomass. Why? Because if you invert it, if this dies off, okay, this is going to release the energy that is going to directly affect or directly invigorate your primary producers, giving rise to a increased number. Then if this also dies, then also it is going to do the same, and if this dies, then also it is going to do the same, because the energy cannot be inverted, but the numbers can be, or the effective mass that they are offering, that can be. Okay, effective mass that they harbor or collectively harbor, that can be reversed. Okay, so this is our primary or the pyramid of biomass. Okay, then we move on to the pyramid of number. What is this pyramid of number? From the name itself, it simply means the number of individuals of that particular trophic level and of that species contributing into that ecosystem. Okay, contributing to that ecosystem. So if we say for a grassland ecosystem or for a simply forest ecosystem, okay, this could represent a grassland ecosystem, but it could represent also a forest ecosystem. It does not really matter. Why? Because the primary producers will always be of the highest number, followed on them will be your primary consumers, followed on them will be your secondary consumers, and then as we move on, the population size continuously decreases, continuously decreases, and if we invert this, because this can also be inverted, if they start to die off, then it simply means the population size increases up as we go in the inverted pyramid. Okay, so simply this reverse by itself. Okay, very simple. Carries a lot of marks. It can be from your 5 marks question, or very simple questions. Okay, like it could say that please explain, or explain what is grassland ecosystem, or how will you define a grassland ecosystem with proper trophics and a pyramid of biomass or a pyramid of number. Can this be inverted? Okay, these are very straightforward questions, but all you need to understand a proper concept on what can be inverted and what cannot be inverted. Okay. Alright, then we move on to the next chapter or the next unit, which is very important for you, that is biotechnology, and is often avoided by many of you. Biotechnology is not particularly hard, okay, not particularly hard if you understand the core concepts, okay. If you understand the core concepts, in this little slide I have tried to explain, or I have tried to give you a small hint on what is this cloning vector and how can we integrate or inoculate a gene from this genetic engineering methods, making a recombinant molecule or making a recombinant DNA that is transferred to our site of action and to the organism that will become the producer of a particular bioproduct, okay. Because why? Biotechnology is always related to the benefit of mankind, okay. That is the basic definition of biotechnology, hence always produces a bioproduct. That is why it always produces a bioproduct. Let's suppose, okay, that you need a bioproduct A, okay, and in nature that is very rare, okay, and that is very rare and that is very scarce, okay. What do you do in that condition? You properly integrate or find out which of those genes can produce in the microbial level, okay, which of those genes can produce that same bioproduct A in the microbial world, and you try to identify which gene is responsible for this. Then you try to isolate that gene, and in that isolation you figure out that this can be transferred to a suitable vector, someone that is going to deliver this gene to the source that is required to produce, okay, this gene. Suppose the one that produces 20 megatons or 20 kilograms of a bioproduct, okay, is taken from your microorganism and transferred through a medium which is called as a vector, okay, to the plasmid or to the host, which is going to then produce it on its own from a successful gene integration, okay, from a successful gene integration. And that is the scope of biotechnology, to create what is desired by the help of modern biotechnological tools or modern tools, okay. So in that context itself, the first thing is that you need to know what is that gene that contains my important or my recommended or desired bioproduct, okay. That is taken, first things first, okay. In that itself you need to first make a recombinant plasmid or make a recombinant vector. Why plasmid? Because plasmid by definition has an extra chromosomal self-replicating autonomous segment or a sequence, hence plasmids, okay. We can make something, you will study in your further classes also, we can make something called as cosmids also, okay. We can make BACs also, we can make YACs also. What is BAC and YAC? It is simply yeast artificial culture and bacterial artificial chromosome, okay. So all these are what? All these contain that self-replicating sequence. If they did not possess that self-replicating sequence, none of them would be a good vector, okay. So if the question comes, how come they are, or how come only these plasmids are chosen for this integration? Because of this particular sequence. It was different for every other, okay, it is different for every different plasmid, but this is a replicating, self-replicating sequence. It is not dependent on something or the other, okay. That is why it is an autonomous body, okay. So what is happening is that we take the tDNA, or we take the DNA that we require, okay. We take it where the site where the restriction enzyme cuts. What is this restriction enzyme? These are such enzymes which are responsible to cleave the DNA at a very specific length, making a very specific fragments, okay. Why this specific length? Because they recognize, because if you take a scissor, okay, and try to cut something, do you not need a pointer on what to cut? Exactly that is happening when we use restriction enzymes. Okay. In this agrobacterial tumefaciens, what is this agrobacterial tumefaciens? This is a bacteria. Okay, from the name itself you can understand it is simply a bacteria which contains this Ti plasmid. Okay, if you remember, what is this agrobacterial tumefaciens responsible for? This causes crown gall disease in your corianders. Okay, and that crown gall disease contains the Ti plasmid, which is that self-replicating sequence, which has that self-replicating sequence. And in that we are going to now insert our gene of interest. How? We cut that gene of interest by using the restriction enzyme, and with the same restriction enzyme we cut the Ti plasmid, which creates what? Which creates complementary cuts, which are then used to join at the exact place of the plasmid that is required along with a marker. Why a marker? Because we need to know whether or not our gene has successfully integrated with the plasmid. And what is that what is the first thing that you see after a successful integration? That is your insertional inactivation. Now, what is this insertional inactivation? If you have a marker, and you put, instead of a blue marker, okay, if you put a instead of a blue marker cap, you put a green marker cap, will it not look odd? And that oddity will tell you that we have misplaced it or we have successfully created it. That is the same purpose of having such a marker. And insertional inactivation tells you whether or not your genes have been properly integrated. Okay. Now moving on to, after this successful integration, you have successfully created a recombinant Ti plasmid. Why? Because recombination is what? Recombination is the exchange of segments. And what you have done is simply exchanging the original sequence with the gene of interest that you want. So this is why we have used the recombinant plasmid. Okay. Moving on. Well, now since you have done this, okay, is your work done? No. You need to put this into a suitable host. Okay. Inserted tDNA carrying new gene is now inserted into a suitable host, which through its own self-replicating mechanism is going to create a lot of copies of this recombinant one, activating the gene of interest, and in that activation is going to create the product that you desire. Okay, so this is the pure property, or this is the entire story on how to get your recombinant DNA from biotechnology, which I feel is going to be asked in your examination this year 2026 itself. Okay, and if it is not as well, some of the questions will definitely come as 3 marks or 2 marks questions. Okay, so please make sure that you read and go through with it. Okay, so that it is very easy for you to attempt these questions. Was it very difficult to understand what I just explained? It's not. All you need to know is that you need to get your gene of interest, insert it into this plasmid which comes from your bacteria. Okay, preferably something that contains this self-replicating or autonomous sequence. After you have inserted, how do you know it is inserted? Through insertional inactivation of your markers. Okay, then after you have created this recombinant plasmid, you simply transfer it to a new cell, okay, or a new host. Host body recognizes it as its own and starts to create a multiple number of copies, in short expressing this gene. Okay, expressing this gene, and in that expression you get the desired product that you have always wanted. Okay, and this is the entire process of your recombinant gene transfer. Okay, moving on, I have taken only 4 topics, so no need to worry and no need to get bored. Okay, this will be the last. Okay, and this I feel will be very much asked from your unit, that is from evolution and inheritance. Okay, from evolution and inheritance, the one thing that you need to be very much sure of is the Hershey and Chase experiment, along with McAvery, McLeod and McCarthy experiment and Griffiths experiment. Okay, these three experiments form the core principle on identifying or helping the scientists to identify that DNA was the part that contained our entire genetic information. Okay, and from that Hershey and Chase experiment, since I am going to explain Hershey and Chase experiment, because I feel that this is the part that most of us skip. Okay, no need to skip, it is very easy. Okay, if you see from the diagram itself, okay, you see from the diagrams itself, it is that in the experiment 1 we are going to test for proteins. Okay, now how do we test for proteins? We protein code radio labels. Okay, what is that element that is present in a protein? That is amino acids, right? Amino acids form protein chains, right? In that amino acid, what is that bond that is formed between amino acids? That is your disulfide linkages. So if you say something is disulfide, what do you need? You need radioactive or radio labeled sulfur, that is a heavy isotope of sulfur. And in that, what happens is we will be incorporating it into the phage DNA. Okay, we will be incorporating it into the phage DNA, and in that phage DNA, what will happen is the bacteria infected will now transfer it, and we will see that there is no radioactivity. Why? Because proteins are not the genetic information. This was the first description on if you take 32S, okay, or a heavy isotope of sulfur, you have radio labeled it. By your calculations, if you feel that protein is the part that is inherited, then protein should show itself, or the radio labeled protein should show itself in the successive generations. But if it doesn't, that means protein is not the one that is being inherited. Okay? And that is what is seen in the testing of proteins. But what happens when you test for DNA? What is that part that you can radio label in DNA? That will be your phosphorus. And where exactly do you find phosphorus? You find it in the nucleotide itself. A nucleotide is comprised of your pentose sugar, okay, deoxyribose pentose sugar, a phosphate group, okay, and a nitrogenous base. Okay, so in that phosphate group we take a heavy isotope, and in that heavy isotope we radio label it. Okay, radio labeling does what? That if it is present in the successive generation, then we will come to know that this is the one that is inherited, and this is the part that is responsible for the entirety of the inheritance. Because this was the experiment that they performed, Hershey and Chase, to check what is that part. They knew about DNA, they knew about protein, they knew about carbohydrates, they knew about lipids, but none of them knew that what is the part that contributes to the inheritance. What is inherited, what is taken in the next generations, okay, or what is responsible for it. This experiment concluded this with a simple answer, that if it were protein, radio labeled protein did not show itself in the successive generation, while the radio labeled DNA did show itself in the further generations. Okay, and this is the conclusion, that DNA is the genetic material. Okay, and proteins are not the genetic material. Okay, why this? Okay, these 4 topics are very small, okay, and carry a lot of marks. Okay, please don't skip this out, and I hope that this video is helpful to you. Read up on it. If you have any doubts, please let me know. And since I have asked a question from you all, I expect an answer in the comment section. Okay, I'll be seeing you all very soon. Thank you. Have a safe Holi and have a proper exam study. Hope you do better and hope you do good.